is 2:15. Let's get this show on the road. Hello, friends, and welcome. This is how to connect with clients as yourself. So, this is kind of in the same vein of what Jen from Mixtus Media was doing. It is a discussion of connecting with people as who you are rather than masking profoundly in public. So, in case you don't know who I am or haven't met me yet, which I figure most of you have, but if you hadn't, I am E. I am the founder or one of the founders of this conference. I am the owner of Insomnia Self-Publishing Services. I am currently the head of the Editorial Freelancers Association chapter in New England. I've been editing since about 2008, and I was diagnosed with ADHD and autism in November 2022. Not on this slide is the fact that I'm a gigantic tabletop role-playing game nerd. I'm a musician, I'm an author myself, and I have owned an indie publishing company for years. We recently switched over to selling services instead. So, that is a bit about me. You will probably learn more about me through the course of this talk, and might end up learning too much about me through the course of this talk. So, let's get into this. First off, what we are covering. We're going to cover things like identifying who the you want to share is, because we are taught to mask so hard that it is frequent that we don't even know exactly who's us. It's a challenge for neurodivergent people, and as I've been going through the process of unmasking, the idea of who am I and who am I underneath the mask has been a prevailing part of my explorations of self. And that is part of this process. Now, you don't need to share all of that self with everybody. And to the audience, this is mostly for editors. However, if you are in here as an author, this is also going to work for you with connecting with folks on your social media, so you don't need to run screaming, but I am going to be mostly talking to editorial folks in this discussion. Second, it's going to be how to share that self with other people, which is also a terrifying prospect when you have spent your life being told that who you are and yourself is a bad thing. So I'm hopeful that you will walk away from this with a more comfortable idea of how to identify who you are and feeling more free to share that person with the world, because in fact, you are welcome, wanted, and appreciated as who you are. John, absolutely. It has taken a long time to figure out who I am behind the mask, so you aren't going to walk out of this presentation knowing exactly who you are, but maybe you can start down that road if you haven't begun it yet. We are going to look at how we use ourselves to create a brand, how you take you and turn it into something you can sell. And I don't necessarily mean that in a bad sense, but who you are is going to be a facet of your brand, and that is an important facet of your brand, and you should not just delete it. We're going to talk about how to be authentic on social media and what the boundaries of that are. I'm not going to tread on Nikolai Weiskal's excellent talk that's happening later about not setting your brand on fire, but this is going to have a little bit of overlap with that. There are some caveats to sharing things on social media. My cat is about to be on my desk and completely in the way. I apologize in advance. Sir, you are... No, be gone, sir. Ahem. The cat. Right, that is the biggest problem with this conference, is there is a cat. He's lucky he's cute. Alright, so first off, we're going to talk about identifying yourself and what that entails. So, identifying yourself is more than just a list of attributes, but we're going to start with a list of attributes because it's going to be easier. So, identifying a list of your hobbies and passions, your special interests. For me, that is tabletop role-playing games, fiber arts, history, martial arts, sword stuff. I am just a collection of weird hobbies. So, making a note of those, and this could be something you actually write down on some paper. Yeah, no, cats can absolutely be on camera. It's Sultan, please. Sir, you cannot be on my desk right now, thank you. He's so helpful. He's my editorial assistant. I should probably pay him more. Probably in chicken sandwich, because that's what he's after. Second, you want to think about what your personal values are, things you stand for and believe in. I am passionate about LGBTQ rights. I am passionate about neurodivergence. There are a number of values I hold that shape the way I interact with the world. So think about who you are and what your values are. And these are things, these notes don't have to be public. These are just for you. These are things that you can just use to identify who you are and start this process. So you can share things that you really don't want public because the only person seeing this list is you. Next is being honest. Identify your strengths, your skills, which feels weird. I know, because it feels like you're talking about how great you are, and we're taught not to do that. But you can identify things you're good at, as well as talking about things that are difficult for you. I am, for example, hyperlexic. I read faster than anybody else I've ever met. However, I'm dyscalculic, and badly so, so you really don't want me trying to do math. I'm good at organizational leadership, but I'm bad at not overcommitting myself and ending up crashing and burning. So those are some things that I personally struggle with and things I am good at. So you can make those lists of things for yourself. Next, things when it comes to editing, or for the authors in the audience for writing. Look at your preferences and things you enjoy. What genres do you like to work on? What types of editing do you really prefer? Do you like developmental editing over line editing? Do you prefer to work with clients directly, or would you rather work with a company? Are there genres you like more than others? This is all going to be part of your brand and part of how we interact with people in public spaces. So what we are doing here is identifying pieces of yourself in order to build a public persona that is honest and authentic to who you are, because you don't need to not be who you are to be publicly enjoyed. One of the things I have here, you see, this is my bathrobe. This is a fuzzy teal bathrobe. It looks blue on the screen, but this is a teal bathrobe. My TikTok videos are done almost exclusively in this bathrobe. If you go on my TikTok channel, I'm giving publishing advice in my bathrobe with bedhead. So when I say you can be yourself and not have to mask in order to be accepted, you absolutely can be that person. If you are a disaster bathrobe gremlin and you are comfortable sharing the fact that you are a disaster bathrobe gremlin with the world, you will find people who connect with that. Next, note down your credentials. So, the fact that I've been editing since 2008, projects you've worked on, books you've been part of, any professional spheres that you're in, like the Editorial Freelancers Association, CIEP, ACES, etc. Those are things you should probably include in all of this. So, once we have this list of who we are on this paper, we're going to start looking at how do we share that with other people. What are the steps we need to take in order to express that self to others in a way that will connect rather than overwhelm? So first off, I'm going to talk about breaking through our masks, because this is a neurodivergent conference. We all mask pretty hard, whether we've had to because of work, whether we are late diagnosed and didn't realize that we were masking our whole lives. We all wear masks. So we want to start looking behind that. What sharing yourself with others means is accepting who you are. It's okay if you have limitations. If you don't like to do video calls with clients because video calls make you super anxious, that's all right. Those are things that you can accept about yourself, and accept your skills and triumphs too. Sharing a curated version of yourself in public spaces. I'm going to get a little more into how to curate that, but that is a thing. You are only going to be sharing things that you choose to share with others. And what you share and don't share is entirely up to you. Nobody else can or should force you to make any of those decisions. And then finally, be honest about yourself. Be honest about your interests, even if you think they are weird and nobody else is into them. Say you collect dried rose petals and turn them into, I don't know, some kind of collage art. Like, whatever weird hobbies or interests you have, it's okay to have those, and you will find that people will connect with those. Clients will connect with those. Thank you. I'm sorry about the meowing in the background. When you are talking about these things, you will discover in time that when you share those pieces of yourself that you choose to share, you will find people connect with them and are like, oh, this person gets it. I want them to edit my book. That is absolutely a thing that has happened to me when I have shared personal things. What sharing yourself does not mean, on the other hand, you are not required to disclose anything that makes you uncomfortable. From your gender identity to whether or not you're neurodivergent, you don't need to disclose anything you really don't want to share. My view, like what people see of me on my social media accounts, is relatively unfiltered because I chose to be wildly authentic and who I am as loudly in public as possible, because I have a strong enough sense of self that if somebody doesn't like me for being me, that sounds like a them problem, not a me problem. However, I recognize fully that not everybody is as bulletproof. So sharing yourself, you don't have to share anything you're uncomfortable with. But I do encourage you to think about things like hobbies that might be things you're comfortable sharing. So say your favorite movie. If you're really into The Lord of the Rings, you can share that. That's a relatively surface level fact that shouldn't draw any fire. Shannon, I hear you. As I said, you do not have to disclose your neurodivergent status or your gender or your ability or disability status. I talk about those things a lot because I'm okay with the attention that comes with that, and I'm doing so on purpose. But you don't have to. If you don't want people to know, don't share it. That's okay. Finally, the sharing yourself doesn't mean you don't have privacy. You do not have to share things. Like, I've been having a medical problem recently. I'm not telling people what it is because it's none of their business, but I've been having a medical problem. And that is a thing that the rest of the world, the only reason I talk about it is because it means I'm not on my social media as much and I'm slower to get back to clients. So I'm explaining things in terms of, yeah, I'm having an issue. I've got surgery next week. And I'm sharing that, but I'm not telling them what it is because I'm not comfortable sharing that. So I'm not. You don't need to share things that you aren't comfortable with, and you are allowed to keep privacy. All right, let me find my mouse again. There we go. Okay, so what does it look like? Where do you share yourself? It means revealing portions of your personality and talking about your hobbies and passions and about things that you enjoy or things you support. So that can look like doing it on social media. Jen from Mixed Media had an amazing presentation about where on social media and how often to share things. Like, her marketing advice is just brilliant. I also suggest maybe using your newsletter. Like, I use my interests in my newsletter all the time. I will talk about things that I'm doing, things I'm passionate about, and people really connect with that and are part of my newsletter because of that content. To me, it doesn't feel like I'm providing anything that interesting, but they really like it, and they like getting to know me. Sharing personal achievements with peers. Sharing yourself also means connecting with people. Not just clients, but your writing and editing community. In our Facebook groups, we are sharing struggles, joys, triumphs. These things matter, and they help you learn to be more open and be more yourself. And whether you are just figuring out who that self is or not, that's fine. You can take your time with this. It's not an all or nothing game. It's not a constant that you have to do this every single minute. And you don't have to do it all at once either. You can do it in stages and get comfortable with it before you move on. And it also means developing your network through being honest. What I mean is, when I connect with somebody, I connect with them as myself. I don't connect with them as somebody I think they might like. Because the temptation is there. We mask. We do a lot of it. And there's the temptation to present ourselves as someone the rest of the world would like, right? Because nobody will like me. I'm just a weird nerd. Nobody would like me. I can't be that person in public. I can't be that person with other editors because I'm not good enough and they won't like me. I have news for you. Editors are all weird nerds. That's what we do here. Writers, weird nerds. We are all weird nerds. And while I understand that the world has put a lot of pressure on us to act or appear or speak or behave a certain way, we are all weird nerds. And that's one of the reasons why I love the writing and editing community so much. So you can share these pieces and parts of yourself in various different ways through these methods, and through other methods too. But it means just be who you are. Be a weird nerd. And if anybody doesn't like it, they're not your target audience. That's an important thing. If people don't like you, then you wouldn't have wanted to work with them anyway, because it would have been exhausting and a lot of work and probably not much fun. So how does this relate to your editorial brand Or for authors, how does this relate to your author brand? But again, I'm mostly focusing on editors here. We're going to start off with a definition of what a brand is, because a lot of folks don't actually know. They hear the word a lot and they have a lot of assumptions around it, and I did go to business school long enough that I can give you this information pretty clearly. A brand is basically what people associate with you. For some things, it's colors. It's your logo. It might be the type of content you share, your attitude. All of those things are parts of your brand. For example, on all of these slides, I have my logo up here in the corner, the TCS logo. That is branding. That is helping you associate that with me. And that is part of branding. My discussions of disability in public, part of branding. The fact that I'm not shy about the fact that I am on public assistance, because if I didn't have medical care through public assistance, I would be dead, is part of my branding, because it is that really complete authenticity. You don't need to do that, but it is important to associate certain things with certain people. So when you come up on somebody's feed or into their email box, or when somebody sees you at a conference, they're going to make a connection between you and what they know about you so far. For example, whenever Dana comes up, Dana Riedenauer, I think I pronounced that right. If I didn't, I'm sorry. But whenever Dana shows up, I know that they are going to be helpful, honest, forthright, loving, and they are going to have the best of intentions, because I know them and I know their brand. Their brand is direct honesty. They are fiercely protective of their people, and they are just wonderful. And I'm sure I'm making Dana blush right now, but that's okay. Yes, I know Iris by her sparkly lights, and those are great. Like, I recognized her background when I saw her. And I was like, oh, I know you. You're the sparkly background person. That's all part of branding. It's those things that make people connect facets of you with you. It's those pieces that when somebody sees your content or your logo or your email, that's who this person is. That is your brand. That is all branding is it's just a constellation of things people associate with you. So, what do we do to create a brand? How do you create your own brand, and what does that even mean for you? Well, for your editing career, it means, as I said, building association between who you are and certain elements. Over on the right-hand side, you can see a logo. When people see the 13 Cents Short logo up here, they recognize that, oh, that's Ellis Prybylski's, that's Ease. They know that logo. Colors. This entire presentation has been actually in my brand colors. So it's a subtle thing, but you can create an association between a collection of colors, like Laura Burge, who is in this conference somewhere right now. Her hair being blues and purples, I associate that with her. Whenever I see a picture of her and I see her hair, it's like, that's Laura. I know exactly who that is. That kind of thing, and you can also do it with your website and other things. Hobbies. So we have certain hobbies. At this point in my life, whenever somebody shares something about sword fighting, or a lot of people share writing things with me. Yep, Iris, absolutely. Whenever people share like fiber art stuff, I get about 500 people sharing me similar memes or similar things relating to my hobbies. Sometimes when there's a big meme going around that people are like, oh, E needs this, I will get it literally 30, 40, 50 times from various different sources. But that means that people have identified that thing and they've associated it with me, which is an important part of branding. Also, your personality, how people connect with you. Like, they will associate certain how they feel in your presence or when communicating with you through any medium. They will associate that feeling with you. One of my things that I work really hard to cultivate is that I do my level best to make people feel safe in my presence. I try to make them feel safe and protected. Now, there are people who I don't want to feel safe in my presence, and those people know that they are unwelcome where I am. But as a general rule, I want people to feel safe, comfortable, and like they can be themselves. I have worked very hard to create that impression on others. And that is one of the things that you can include in your brand. How do you want people to feel when they see your name pop up on social media? That is also part of your brand. Or see your name pop up in anything like a conference or the EFA mailing list. So leading that into social media authenticity. So authenticity is important. We've talked a lot about masking. Masking is a thing. However, masking doesn't mean we aren't entirely authentic, but it can mean that we are so busy trying to be somebody society wants that we are not being ourselves. And we need to start peeling back the edges of that a little bit, a piece at a time, in your own time. But if we're not being authentic in communicating with people, others will pick it up and we won't pass the vibe check. That is absolutely a thing that can happen. So being honest and completely who you are to the degree you want to share with people is valuable, and people will react and respond to that because they will understand that they are connecting with an actual human being. Now, again, we aren't always going to be encountering people who are our target audience. There are going to be people in your world for whom being yourself is a problem. And honestly, it is a them problem, not a you problem. If a person doesn't like you, they don't like your hair, they don't like your hobbies, they think you're a nerd in a bad way, they think that you're somehow lesser because you're autistic or whatever it is, whatever nonsense they come up with, right? That means they are not your target audience and you would never want to work with that person. I mean, there are people who think nerd's a pejorative. I don't think there's a bad way to be a nerd, but there are people who think being a nerd's a bad thing. Less in modern day, but I come from the 1980s and 90s when being a nerd was like the worst thing you could be. So, I'm old. But that is kind of the thing, is if you aren't connecting with those people, it's okay that you aren't connecting with those people. You don't have to connect with those people because they are not your people. So trying to attract those people as clients, it's not going to be great. So rather than trying to attract everybody as clients, let's try and focus on attracting the people we want to work with, who will accept us, and who want to work with us specifically. Not just with any editor, but with us personally. That is what authenticity is about. As I just said, it attracts clients who want to work with you. Not just an editor, not just anybody. They want to work with you. And that is an important distinction, because if somebody wants to work with you personally, they will likely be willing to pay more. They are likely to respect your editorial advice more completely. They are likely to be more comfortable with you and receive feedback better. And they are likely to be a repeat client. So attracting people who want to work with you as who you are is very important, both for your mental health and for your business. Secondly, it will connect with people in a community based on genuine compatibility. When I make friends with somebody, I want it to be based on complete and honest connection. I try to be friendly with everybody. I'm not friends with everybody, but I try and be kind to everyone. But when I am actually friends with someone, it's because we connect. And whether it's we have some similar interests, shared values, whether we make each other laugh, whatever it is, those connection points are going to be the things that really matter when it comes to long-term relationships and networking. Next, that authenticity allows us to be ourselves more. It means that you don't need to put as much work into existing in space. When you are more yourself, there is a lot less pressure in some ways. Shannon, absolutely, I love that. If you determine that you want to be friends with somebody, well, that is absolutely perfect. Like, I'm your problem now. Welcome to being my friend. I'm going to send you about 300 million memes. Enjoy. Yeah, I'm the same person. But allowing yourself to unmask in the presence of others, it's hard and it's scary. But as you do it and as you build those connections, that means that it's going to be less terrifying when you need to say, reach out and be like, hey, I'm struggling with this editorial problem, and find a colleague to talk to. Because if you've connected with people in a genuine and honest way, you don't need to pretend to be somebody you're not when you're approaching that person. You can just be like, hey, Heather, I'm having a brain day and my brain is not doing the brain thing. Does this comma go here, or am I losing my effing mind? And Heather Dewey Pettit will pat me on the head and be like, well, we'll figure that out. Also, have you eaten anything today? Because that is the kind of friendship we have. that's when you are more yourself, you can make those connections, and it makes it easier to ask for and receive help and support, which is really important because while we work alone a lot, we also need community. Next, authenticity is obvious to people. Being honest, curated. I mean, I don't talk about my political views too much on my public media. I mean, I'm not quiet about the fact that I'm quite liberal, but I don't really talk about it a great deal. I don't really talk about my religious philosophies unless it's on a one-on-one conversation. There are things that I hold back and don't discuss in depth with people and everybody, but I'm still me. And that authenticity, who I am, comes through when I communicate with people because they can tell I am being genuine. When I tell somebody I really enjoy that, or that was a great conversation, or I really enjoyed your book, they know I'm telling them the truth because they also know that I will tell them if something isn't great or isn't fabulous. And I don't try to appeal to everybody. And also, in a world where everybody is trying to sell you something, like you turn around and there's product placement. Behold, pain reliever. I'm not trying to sell you that pain reliever, but you get my point. Everything's a brand name. Everything is trying to create an association in your brain. There's so much chaos around us that somebody who's just being them, somebody who's just honest and helpful and trying to connect with a human being as a human being, it stands out so much. It's one of the reasons why when brands do TikTok trends or whatever, if they're just doing it to jump on the trend as a marketing thing, most people are like, that is cringe. Yes, I'm using Gen Z. It's cringe. And when somebody does something genuine, or when the trend starts and people are just jumping on it because it's fun and goofy, that works. That's the difference, is the authenticity of it. If they're just trying to sell me something using the trend, meh. But if it's genuinely funny, I'll take it. So what does that authenticity entail? We're getting right down to the end, so I'm going to try and zero in. Yes, Heather, I have eaten today. Thank you. I devoured most of a chicken sandwich right before this because I realized I hadn't eaten. Anyway, what does authenticity entail? What does it mean? It means sharing the parts of your life that you're comfortable sharing, things you're comfortable with others knowing. I don't mind people knowing that I do historical reenactment and play with swords. I don't mind people knowing that I'm physically disabled. I don't mind people knowing that I'm a musician, I'm autistic, and a whole bunch of other things. Like, those are the things you can share. Sometimes it does mean being vulnerable. On my Instagram, a few weeks ago, I posted a photo that I took of myself lying on the floor of the emergency room because I was in some of the worst pain of my life. And the photo was not a good photo, but I shared it because it was raw and I was sharing something about the disability experience and saying even strong people have bad days, and essentially like, we might look fine most of the time, but we're not sometimes. You don't have to share a photo of yourself in the emergency room, to be clear. That was me making that choice. But being vulnerable, being like, I'm having a tough time today. Or, I'm sad because something happened. Or, I lost a friend. Or, I lost a pet. Or, it doesn't have to be all good all the time. You can be honest about things. And sometimes being vulnerable means receiving support. I've been really vulnerable the last week about my health problems, and as a result, I have received an outpouring of support and kindness from my people from this community that I could not have anticipated, and the gentleness and love with which I have been treated, like, I will start crying if I talk about it. That kind of thing helps, and it also helps us feel less alone, so it connects us in a world that's very disconnected. And finally, it shows the human behind the keyboard. Like, yes, I would like to be seen as a consummate professional. I am an editor of significant skill. I know what I'm doing. I'm good at my job. But I'm more than just my line edits. I'm more than just that. And connecting with me as a person behind that is important. What authenticity, there we go. What authenticity isn't, on the other hand, do not share all of your thoughts on social media without thinking them through. If something happens and you read a news article that gives you a feeling, your knee-jerk reaction may not be excellent. And this is kind of where I'm verging into the space where Nikolai Weiskal's excellent talk is going to be tomorrow. Make sure you take a chance to think things through and make sure that what you're sharing on your public social media are things that actually you want people to know. Being authentic, not that I think anybody in this room is going to be that, but being authentic isn't being a jerk because you're mad. If you're angry, that's a fair and reasonable response, but you might want to step away from the keyboard and moderate your experience if you're in a public space. Because if you're saying things in public, the public will remember them. So being a jerk or being really brusque or unfriendly, because that's just who I am, is not really what I'm getting at. Again, I don't think anybody here is that person. That's not really the case. And I'm going to keep hammering this home. Do not share things you are uncomfortable sharing. You do not have to share anything that you find unpleasant to share. Now, if it's just a little bit of uncomfortable, like I'm being perceived, that's one thing. Like if you're sharing a piece of artwork you did and you're like, oh, is anybody going to like it? That's a little different than I don't really want to share personal medical information. Or I don't really want to share my kids' names. Or I don't really want to share other personal things. But so you're going to want to find the line between what makes you uncomfortable as I'm being perceived and what makes you uncomfortable as in I really don't want the public knowing this about me. Those are separate discussions. And I'm going to keep hammering that home. You don't have to share things you don't want to. And I really don't want you to share things that you're uncomfortable sharing, because that just leads people down bad roads. The caveats here, all right? I'm in overtime. I think I'm in overtime. Am I in overtime? I don't know. We'll find out. Actually, no. No, I'm right on time. Excellent. What we are watching out for in all of this? I told you I was going to keep hammering on this. You don't need to disclose everything. You don't need to disclose things you don't want to disclose. If you don't want to tell somebody you're trans and you just want to be seen as male, female, whatever, you don't need to explain anything. You owe nobody an explanation. If you want to share it, cool, but don't. I'm out about being trans because, well, I mean, I am, so if you don't like it, bite me. You know, you don't need to share your neurodivergent status if you don't want to. If you jump on my desk, I swear to God. He's scheming things in the background. I would use caution sharing certain subjects in public. I'm not telling you not to share them. If they are important to your brand or they are important to you and they're things that you really want to share in public and are prepared for the discourse that comes with that sharing in public, then go for it. But I'm cautious when I share things regarding politics, religion, and social issues, not because I don't share that stuff, but because I want to make sure that I'm doing so mindfully. If I intend on those issues being part of my brand, we're back to branding. If I want people to associate my brand with those things, then share away. I mean, if you hear the name Rachel Maddow, you have certain associations with her as a person and as a content creator, as a reporter, as a podcaster, and as a writer. You can tell what she believes, but that's part of her brand. If you don't want it to be part of your brand, I wouldn't talk about it much on social media, at least in public. If you want to talk about things in private spaces, that's obviously your prerogative, but doing things in public, make sure you're thoughtful about it and intentional. Like I said here, the internet is forever, so when you share something, be aware that it is going to be available. Somebody might screenshot it, they might share it, they might whatever. It is going to be available, so that's one of the reasons why I advise you do things with thought. I don't want to make anybody afraid to post stuff on the internet, because you shouldn't be afraid. Ugh. Solve it. You still can't have the chicken sandwich. He's hopeful. I don't want anybody to approach sharing things with anxiety, but make sure you at least take a second and check yourself when you're getting ready to share something you have strong feelings about. Because when we are emotionally involved in something, no, you can't have the chicken sandwich. Yes, my cat is emotionally involved with the chicken sandwich. When we are emotionally involved with something, we're going to feel that pressure to act now, respond now, do now. And we probably should take a second and consider, is this something that I would like to have associated with me for the rest of time? Humans make mistakes, and it's okay if you make a mistake. You can immediately walk it back, or you can be honest about an apology or what have you, but think about it a little bit. Again, when you're talking to clients, you don't need to tell them you're autistic. You don't need to tell them you have ADHD. If you would like to tell them those things, sure. But you don't have to tell them that. It's not a requirement for authenticity. I mean, authenticity doesn't need to be every single piece of you in full public view. You don't need to stand naked on a street corner going, "Look at me! Here I am!" I don't recommend it, in fact. You'll probably get arrested. But you can... I did not plan on doing that on camera, but here we are. This is my life now. The internet is forever, so the internet, enjoy that. That is a thing. So you don't have to disclose things. And as I said a number of times through this, the people who don't like your content, or the people who don't connect with you, or the people who don't like you, you don't want to work with them anyway. They're not your target audience. They're not the people who would want to work with you. So if I share a TikTok video about me being non-binary and somebody comes into my comments section and says, well, I would never want to work with you because you're such and such slur or whatever, then good for them. I didn't want to work with them anyway. Ugh, gross. I would rather work with somebody who wants to work with me. And it's hard because obviously a lot of us have rejection sensitive dysphoria, so that rejection is painful. That idea that we are not enough, that the person doesn't want us, is not a pleasant feeling. It is something horrible to endure. And Devin, yeah, maybe standing naked on a street corner is great exposure, but I would also get arrested for said great exposure. So, and I'd also probably die of said exposure. It's winter in New England, so that's exposure on a whole lot of levels that I'm just not prepared to deal with. Getting back to they're not your target audience. If somebody were to watch my talk here and be like, I don't like anything they had to say, I don't think it was useful, and they're an idiot. Okay, cool. The talk wasn't for them. I'm not trying to engage with somebody who really doesn't like me. I'm trying to find the people who do like me. The people who want to work with me personally. The people who enjoy my weird sense of humor. Who enjoy my bathrobe gremlin antics. Who enjoy me. Those are the people I would like to have as clients and friends. And those are the kind of people that you want to start attracting with this being yourself sort of brand. That is the end of my slideshow. So, does anybody have any questions, or is there anything that I can share with you, or anything I can encourage you in? Yes, those who enjoy my cat cameos, absolutely. If you have questions, you can post them in chat, or if you would rather do them in voice, you can come up to the podiums. I need to figure out how to market to people who need those books. Yeah, that is ever the challenge. I think Jen Hansen DePaula's talk on social media is going to get you far. This wasn't so much a talk on marketing as it is a talk on being yourself, because we have so much pressure to not be ourselves in our lives. And I've met so many editors who are afraid to be themselves because they're like, but nobody likes me and I'm weird. It's like, no, but people will like you because you're weird. If you want to work on ASD content and you feel that by being on the spectrum you have something to offer, how do you approach it? At which point, my videos on TikTok, I am honest about. So my main platform is TikTok. I've got like 7,000 followers, 8,000 followers, somewhere in that vicinity. And I'm honest about the fact that I am neurodivergent. That is one of the things. I tell people that, and I have been open about it, and that the fact that I am that means that people who are also that find me and connect with me. Pamela, yeah, you have several selves, yeah? Many of us have several selves, so the public speaking version of me has it way more together than bathrobe gremlins sit in the corner me. They're the same person, but they're slightly different versions of the same person. It's almost like LARPing in a way. But they're all still me. I'm still just as much me when I am a pile of goo in a bathrobe as when I am presenting on stage. Is there anything else that I can illuminate for folks? Heather, coming out as being neurodivergent on your YouTube channel, you know what? Go you, though. That's amazing. I'm really glad for it, and I'm glad that you're able to be yourself. And nobody should be forced to do that, but anybody who does, like, I applaud it. It's another form of coming out. Iris, your character is based on you and also neurodivergent. You think it comes out more clearly in the series, you should market it more. Sure, yeah, you can absolutely make that a facet of your marketing. Heather, you know what, that is, you are so brave. That is awesome. You are so brave, and I'm so happy for you. Like, kick ass, friend. Alyssa, being open about your ADHD diagnosis, yeah, it has changed my life, and it has made everything better for me, too. Like, knowing how my brain works has made a massive difference. Alexis, you have difficulty because religious nonfiction is your specialty, so you have to talk about your faith, but religion has hurt people. Okay, so I will tell you straight up, I don't talk about it a lot. I am Christian. I am the worship leader at my church. Religion has hurt people, and I don't varnish that. Like, I've done religious deconstruction, all kinds of stuff. It can be a thorny topic, but if you're coming at it from a place of here's my faith for me, and not trying to tell other people what they believe, or trying to be like, no, you need to live up to my standards of my religious beliefs because you're going to hell otherwise. No, you don't. You can talk about your religion and your faith, about that kind of thing, without making it a negative thing for other people. Some people will find it a turnoff, but you can't please everybody. One of the things that I have worked really hard on is with my Christianity. I don't tend to talk about it a lot because I want people to feel safe with me, because I know religion has harmed people. So I don't discuss it because I don't want anybody coming into knowing me with preconceptions. However, if you are working in this field of religious nonfiction and it's a specialty of yours, that's an important thing because it's part of your brand and part of what you're actively working on. So you can share that with people and express that, and it is an important part of identifying what genres you work in, because if they don't know what genres you work in, you know, what are you going to do? Dana, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Alyssa, I've found that disclosing my neurodivergent status, I mean, look at the community we have now. The community we have built here is because somebody disclosed their neurodivergent status in an editing group, and I was like, you know, we should make a group for that. And then, boom, we have a group of 600 people. We have a writing group of 1,200 people. We have a conference. Sometimes that disclosure can help you find community. And that community is so important because you don't have to do this alone. Like, you don't need to be an island in all of this. And the same, like, we can absolutely be people with feelings and emotions and connections. Marnie, I saw you raise your hand. Do you have a question? If you do, you can come up to the podium and ask, or you can type it. Oh, okay, clapping. Fair enough. Clapping is fine. And yes, absolutely. The more people who disclose, the less it becomes stigmatized. Absolutely. If you are comfortable or feel like you are in a position where you can disclose safely, you don't need to disclose anything that makes you feel unsafe. For example, I know people who live in states where disclosing their trans status would probably get them murdered. And I can understand why somebody wouldn't want to share that if they aren't safe. But if you are safe and you have the ability to disclose, it can be helpful and healing, but I would never force somebody in it. Devin, absolutely. The number of times when I've identified this person's on the same wavelength as me. I can see it, and then we both disclose, and the mask comes off, and you're just like, here we are. Okay, this feels good. Now we can actually have a conversation. It's like putting down a 50-pound weight and just putting it on the floor and being like, all right, here we go. So I've found that incredibly helpful. So disclosure can be very helpful in healing. It is not a requirement, but it can absolutely be useful. And again, it can connect you to your people. It's part of that vulnerability and authenticity thing. It can connect you to your people if you are safe sharing it. If you're not safe, don't make yourself unsafe, please. Do you think it's harder to disclose if you're older in terms of response? Well, I'm 38, and I learned I was autistic when I was 36, 37. I don't know if being older is harder or more dangerous. I can tell you that It might make it more difficult for certain people in your life to accept because you don't fit the mold of what they thought an autistic person was, because you've been masking your whole life and that you didn't act like what they thought an autistic person looked like, because we have a look, right? There can be stigma associated with it, but I don't know that I would say it's harder. I would say it's different. But it can absolutely be healing. My mother at age 70 is learning she is autistic because I'm autistic, and she watched me go through all of this, and she's like, oh, that's me. Oh. And coming to that realization is helpful because it means that you can work with your brain instead of against it. And disclosing that to people might depend on who you disclose it to, I guess. You can kind of gauge whether or not they'd be receptive. If it's somebody who doesn't know you, I'm not sure it makes a difference. If it's somebody who knows you really well, you might get the, but you don't look autistic, and you aren't autistic, you act perfectly normal, so, Yep, John, absolutely. Marnie, yeah, sometimes it's better to disclose how you behave rather than giving an identity. That's absolutely fair and reasonable. You might just be like, yeah, so I prefer to talk in email, I just formulate my thoughts better that way. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to say I'm autistic and prefer text over speaking. You can just say, I like email. That's a completely fair and reasonable thing to say. And if anybody asks, you can just have it be a quirk. I am not seeing any other questions, but if there are any, this is your last call because the session is coming to a close. I believe. Let me double check what time. Yep, until 3. So it is 3 p.m. Neuromagical, that's adorable. Yeah, gauging reception in advance can be perplexing for an ASD person. It can be. As someone who is autistic, it can be a real challenge. I don't always know. All I can do is hope and guess. Hannah, yeah, having the name means that I can be like, no, I'm autistic, so, yeah, no, I don't act like a normal person. I don't act like a neurotypical person. So, John, you are more than welcome to message me later. I'm sorry you're sick. All right. Yes. I hope your cats don't steal it, or if they do, maybe you can get it back.